All right, time for our visit with Mike Morgan, brought to you by State Farm agent Gary Patterson. For 35 years, Mr. Patterson's been serving the real estate needs from Lugoff to Lexington, Columbia to Blythewood. Your auto, home, life insurance, business insurance, they can all be handled by Gary, who spends countless hours helping South Carolinians with all their insurance needs and also making a difference in the community. Go check out GaryPatterson.net today, and Gary will go over the best plans for you and your family. That's GaryPatterson.net.
Brought to you by Love Chevy, where the inventory is overflowing and the deals are in full bloom. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Together, let's drive.
Well, I know Mike Morgan, draftnik that he is. He's been poring over the data, analyzing, evaluating, dissecting, looking at the measurements of hands and feet and biceps and hamstrings and everything else to prepare for his podcast on the draft. Mike, welcome in. How are you?
Thank you. 9 1/4 hand size, 72.5-inch wingspan, 188 pounds, and at one point in my life was really good at the shuttle, but that was a long time ago.
I hear you. Very good. Great to have you with us as always. Let's get into South Carolina, Kentucky baseball this weekend. Now, this Gamecock team is they're kind of a hard team to figure out. I mean, they show they can play with most everybody in the country because they played the best teams in the country, but they're not able to get over that little hump to win those series against these best teams. They're coming up a run short, a run shy, a run here, shy, a run there. And Mark Kingston has even said this week he believes they're one of the best teams in the country. They are just not getting it done to win some of these games. So where are they in your mind? They're a 9-9 league team with 4 league series to go.
Well, and of course, it did sweep Vanderbilt, which will certainly serve them well come Selection Sunday. I think where they are is they're a regional host, but not a top 8 national seed. Now, a lot of that can change, obviously, in the next 12 conference games. But, if you're just kind of going on the track record that they have put forth up to this point, and I would also say just sizing up the roster talent compared to the rest of the league, it's good. It's a good team. You've got 2 elite hitters in the lineup. You've got Jones is one of the better starters, somewhat unconventional. I kind of like that. A ground ball pitcher as opposed to just a guy that's trying to strike out everybody, which has become so prevalent. There's a lot to like there. Do I think they're as talented as Arkansas? No. I think they're as talented as some of the teams that are going to be a top 8 national seed? No, but that doesn't mean they can't play their way into one. And this will be a great series to make a case for that. This is a very good Kentucky team. They're not flukish. I think we're just not used to seeing Kentucky put up that kind of record in a while. Coach Mingione has had some good moments there, and then he's had moments where he's on the hot seat. Kind of sounds familiar, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. But it's a good team. And you're going to go into an environment where they're a little more excited about baseball in Lexington than they ordinarily are. It's a beautiful ballpark up there, by the way, if you haven't been. So you want to go there and take 2 out of 3 if you can. I think that would certainly be a good positive statement in the right direction.
Got to be careful here with this Kentucky team and their speed, right? They love to steal bases, and your pitchers, your catcher, you got to be on the same page here to hold those runners as best as possible. But from what you've seen at Kentucky, do they just run willy-nilly, or do they pick their spots? What do they like to do?
Well, they pick their spots, but they like putting heat on the defense and pitchers on the mound and actually make them think about something. It's the way. If you want to go way back to Tennessee under Rod Delmonico, that's the way they played. A lot of West Coast teams play the way Kentucky does, except Kentucky does have some pop, but they've got a bigger ballpark, and they They do think they hit and run. They do bunt or run a runner over. They do make plays on the bases that a lot of other teams simply don't do because we've fallen into this trap of everybody is swinging for the fences and risk versus reward. I don't want to try and steal a base because if I get caught, it takes me out of an inning. They don't believe in that. They're going to put heat on your defense, and they're going to try and keep some action going and put a little more pressure on whoever's on the mound for Carolina. So that makes them unique. There's no doubt about it. That used to be more customary, quite frankly. But in today's day and age, particularly in the SEC, they're an anomaly. So you have to be a little more on point with everything. If you're behind the plate, you've got to be your vision has to be a little bit better, a little more concentrated on who's on the bags. If you're playing the corners and there's a runner at first and less than 2 outs, well, there's a good chance there could be a bunt drop down. So be ready. So I think all those things come into play this weekend.
Yeah. Of course, that series begins in Columbia tomorrow night, runs through the weekend. What do you think Mark Kingston, Monty Lee have to say to their hitters about hitting with runners in scoring position? Or do you not say too much because it becomes a mental thing for these guys perhaps? What do you do as a coaching staff?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's obviously been the Achilles heel of this team, not just runners in scoring position, even runners on base. The last time I looked it up, which was about a week and a half ago, they were dead last in the conference in batting with runners on base. And, why is that? If you knew the answer to that, you'd fix it. I don't think it's a matter of just having a pep talk. I think sometimes those are really between the ears type of situations, and guys just have to snap out of it on their own. There's not a whole lot a coach can do for you in the middle of an at-bat. If you're just having troubles, if you're performing better in a non-pressure situation than a pressure situation, well, that's on the player. Like it really is. You can play some Jedi mind games with them, but the great ones are able to excel in the clutch and in those run-scoring situations, those damage situations. So, Carolina certainly has the ability to do that, but I don't know if it's a speech in the dugout pregame or on the way home from a long series where you go 2 for 32 with runners on and 1 for 18 with runners in scoring position. At the end of the day, I mean, it's up to the players to switch that.
South Carolina kind of in a dangerous spot here. We're talking about the tournament coming up, and they're 9-9, so they're kind of right there in the middle. But their schedule with Kentucky, Georgia, Tennessee, 9 of the final 12, and they got to play at Missouri, which you would think you go out there and maybe sweep those guys. But then again, Missouri's had its moments this year. My point is the Gamecocks can't afford to lose these series or be swept. They've got to go win some series here to put themselves in a position where they're not dangerously near the cut line for not making the tournament. They would love, of course, to play their way out of the play-in round and be in the established part of the field. But, I mean, they've got to win some games here over the next month.
What was the final series on that list you mentioned?
At Tennessee.
Okay. When I look at that schedule, when I'm sniffing is 6-6. So what would that make them? 15-15?
Yeah, because they're 9-9 now.
And the RPI is good because the strength of schedule is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to go into my crystal ball here.
All right.
and you're looking at a team that's going to be hosting a regional, and if fortunate enough to win, go on the road for a super regional. And good teams are able to win on the road in the postseason. I can't tell you how many super regionals I've been a part of where the road team has won, including a couple of years ago when Arkansas was number 1 for a couple of months, and they lost to NC State at home in Game 3. So just because you don't get a top 8 national seed doesn't mean you can't make it to Omaha. And I'm convinced one of these years this program is going to break through in one of these postseasons. I mean, all you can do is you keep getting to postseasons, and then eventually you break through. And one of these years, this squad is going to have to break through, and maybe this is the year. But when you lay out those particulars for me with the schedule and what I know about the rest of the league, I would say that you're looking at about a 15-15. If things go really your way, 16-14. But that's still probably a regional host and on the road for a super.
Mike Morgan on the move here tonight on Sports Talk. And Mike, big picture in the SEC, are you more surprised, speaking of Kentucky, that they are sitting 15-3 and atop the SEC East, or are you more surprised that defending national champion LSU is 5-13 and next to last in the SEC West?
I think at first glance, I mean, to see the two teams that played for the national championship last year, LSU and Florida, both fighting just to get in the right, both fighting just to get in the SEC tournament. Forget about the NCAA tournament. That's an initial shock to the system, but then you look at what, for example, LSU lost. Well, they lost one of the best college hitters we've seen in the last 20 years, who's already in AA and will probably be called up by the end of the year. And they lost one of the best pitchers we've seen in the last 20 years, in Paul Skeens, who's already in AAA and could be called up to the Pirates in a matter of weeks. You don't just replace those guys, you know. And so, look, I've seen Arkansas go from Omaha to no postseason. I've seen LSU do it. I've seen Florida do it. And it can happen to anybody is what my point is. So is it surprising? Yeah, of course it is. It's just weird to see that. But it's not unprecedented to see really good teams or programs coming off really good years, and then all of a sudden you lose too much talent to recoup.
Phil was joking with you at the outset as we transition a little bit to tonight's NFL draft in the first round. You cover the NFL, so you're plugged into this. Outside of Caleb Williams, obviously I think going to Chicago with the number one pick, what's the more intriguing pick, do you think, if you sort of look big picture at the first round of the draft tonight?
Well, I think the draft starts at number 4 because I don't think there's much question. With all the talk and rumor mongering and everything else, it's going to be Caleb Williams 1, it's going to be Jaden Daniels 2, it's going to be Drake May 3. And I tend to think it's going to be Marvin Harrison 4 to the Cardinals, their modern-day Larry Fitzgerald. Although I wouldn't be shocked if somebody dealt up to get that pick. But it starts at either 4 or 5. And then to me, Brock Bowers is as sure a pick as you're going to have. I'd be shocked if he didn't go in the top 10. Being in Atlanta, Dallas Turner just seems like a no-brainer to the Falcons if he's on the board. I've heard people say, speculate them taking a quarterback. They're not taking a quarterback. They just got Kirk Cousins. It's like you have people on Atlanta radio saying, I will not support a J.J. McCarthy pick. Well, that's great because they're not taking him. So why are you even – talk about a straw man argument. And then I think some of the other interesting storylines, I think we're looking at 6 first-round quarterbacks. I think Penix, McCarthy, Nix, and the 3 I mentioned will all be first round. And then in the local players for Carolina, for example, I think Xavier Legette could either sneak in the late first round or more likely the early second round, only because it is a absolutely stocked wide receiver draft, one of the best I've ever seen. And then Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler is got to be the most wide-ranging guy in terms of where he's going to be selected, because there are some people that are still extremely high on him that think he could be just outside the first round. And there are other people that think he could be late third round. And, some might say, well, what's the difference? At the end of the day, for Spencer, I'd almost rather see him go on a team in a later round where he's got a chance to win the job, as opposed to go in a higher round with an established quarterback and he's just there to hold a clipboard, or a really bad team where he goes out there and he's got nobody to throw to, nobody to block. I mean, you saw a little bit of that last year, quite frankly, with Carolina. So I hope for the young man he gets put in a great situation. But make no mistake about it, he's going to have a shot, and I think he's going to make a roster, and I do think he'll be in the league for a while.
Real quick before you leave us, I couldn't help but think about you the other night when Clemson and Georgia went deep into the night. I think they went, 15 innings?
Yes.
Yeah,
thinking about the game that you called there in Athens between them. How many innings was that, and how many years ago was
20. It was the 5-year anniversary, and Todd Walker, who was my partner then, who was on that game Tuesday night, he and the producer were texting me about it, and they wanted a picture that I think I sent you.
Yeah, I saw it.
Me and Todd. That was at about the top of the 18th, where Todd literally fell asleep. Now Tom Price did that to me a couple of times, but with Todd, it was in the 18th inning, and I had to nudge him, go get some more coffee.
Yeah,
we were on the air. The game was 6 hours and 33 minutes.
Wow.
And I remember specifically, it was a Tuesday night. It was a decent crowd when we started, and then they started to file out because it was late at night, Tuesday night, and all the regular folks had school and work to worry about. But then when we hit about 1 in the morning and the bars were closing in Athens, all these kids started racing to Foley Field, and it wound up being the best crowd we had all night because they were hammered. And they saw on TV that we were still going, and they're like, hell, we got nothing better to do. Let's go to Foley Field and cheer these guys on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the crowd that we finished with. It was an incredible moment. In all seriousness, no, I think it's not good for a college baseball team to be playing a 20-inning, 6.5-hour game, or even a 15-inning game, because your more important games are clearly on the weekend. And you can't burn your pitching staff on a Tuesday night game. I mean, I think you'd almost want to go to the MLB rule at that point and have a runner at second to start every inning to speed it up a little bit. I'm sure the coaches deep down wouldn't mind that, but that rule is not in place as of yet.
Yeah, I was thinking about you as that thing was playing out.
Yeah.
Listen, we got to run. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, sounds great, guys.
Mike Morgan.
Thanks, Mike.
Morgan on the move. I'd like to say exclusively on Sports Talk, but I think Mike appears on about 25 radio shows and podcasts and streams. Very popular
Good in
guy.
the Chief Sports app.
The Chief
us.
Sports app. That's right. Make sure you have that. It's free. You can find us and other programs there, and we'll be right back.